Hello, my name is Vanessa and I'm an alcoholic. My sobriety date's October 8th, 2017, and Happy New Year. We're in 2024 and I am really excited about it. A couple of things. Nothing. I just took a third step with my sponsee and I love it. This is one of the best steps in all of the 12 steps, and I want to talk to you a little bit about it now. So the third step is we made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood him. And it's still very patriarchal language, but we'll just gloss over that for now. This is such an important step because, and I take it every time with my sponsees. And what that means, what we do is we go through the book, we read it, we understand what it means to run our life on our own self-will. To me, you can really incorporate this into a lot of like Buddhist thought too. Like we have to create a certain sense of detachment and stop thinking that us creating chaos and controlling in an effort to control it gives us any real meaningful sense of purpose or can ever create an environment in which we are doing what is best for our highest selves and for the people around us. So if you didn't understand any of that, it's likely because you're not an alcoholic or an addict. And I know that the terms addict and alcoholic are becoming quickly outdated. I'm going to cling to them because to me they are humbling, and they are something, they are titles that are less desired by the general population, but which I am not necessarily proud of, but that I have found to be destigmatized in my own understanding because of how they have made me to become a better person than I was when I was denying what those words were in relation to me. So all of that to say, back to step 3, to make a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God, higher power, etc. It's such an important step. And the reason for this is because we are truly believing that regardless of whatever power we try to exert in any situation over people, places, things, principles, beliefs, ideas, that there is this higher power, this universe, this God, Jesus, whatever you want to create this higher power, whatever you know this higher power is that exists outside or outside of my control, that it has my highest and best and good in mind, that I will always be protected, that I will always be safe regardless of the outcome or regardless of how it looks to me at the time. And it's so important. And I take this third step with sponsees. And what that means to take the third step is to really, I do a 10-minute meditation on reflecting on this relationship with this higher power, with God. And then we say the third step prayer. And then they are free to go. And so I take it with them, the meaning that I sit in meditation with them on my knees for 10 minutes, and then I say the third step prayer with them. Because I do want them to know that they're not alone in this, and that every person in AA, well, every person in who does the Big Book Awakening this way, is doing this with the same intention. We are all agreeing with each other that we are not God. Even though we get this really fantastic delusion sometimes that we are, and that we have any type of control over the outcome of the greater state of things. Now, this doesn't mean to just like roll over and expect life to happen to you and that's just what's going to happen. It's rather that we are positioning ourselves in our lives in such a way that we are not the top commander of our lives, that we are seeking direction that comes from meditation, from a quietness, from a peacefulness, from a pure place in our lives, to where we're not intentionally running on our own self-will. And the reason that we want to avoid running on our own self-will is because it is rooted in selfishness and self-centeredness. And I love to reiterate the fact to sponsees and to myself that selfishness is not, the connotation of that word has come to be so negative, right? It's such a judgmental word. You're such a selfish person. You're so blah, blah, blah. In reality, what they're saying in the big book, Alcoholics Anonymous, is that it is rooted in fear and self-delusion. And I think that we delude ourselves because we're in such fear of the world and of other people and of ourselves. And I think that when we approach selfishness and self-centeredness within ourselves and in other people from that standpoint, it makes us a much better humanity. So, for example, in my alcoholism and even in my sobriety, I have seen that I have acted out in from a place of selfishness when I am afraid that I'm not going to get what I want, that I'm not, or that I'm going to lose something that I want, or that I need to fight to keep something, or that I need to manipulate situations to make sure that they turn out the way that I think that I'm going to be the safest or the most secure in. And it's a delusion, because when I'm coming from that place of fear and I'm acting out and treating other people from that place of fear, I actually have already lost control of the situation. I have become deluded with my own self-interest to the point where I'm no longer actually participating in the humanity and life around me. I am trying to play God and trying to manipulate situations around me to better secure the outcome that I want. What happens? Somebody eventually ends up getting hurt. Something eventually ends up falling off, and then I'm left with a bunch of chaos, and I've just realized that I've been a tornado for the last whatever amount of time, right? So it's important to look at that as a sense that, like, and why? Because I was afraid, and I thought that I wasn't going to get what I wanted or what I thought I deserved. So it's really interesting concepts to think about selfishness in that way, and especially if you see it in other people. You're like, oh, this person's afraid. This person is acting out of selfishness because they are afraid that if they do not fight to wrangle what it is that they want out of life, that it's just that they're just not going to get it, and that they're not going to be okay. And it looks crazy when you see somebody else doing it. It looks insane to see somebody put so much effort into trying to secure some certain outcome, because as human beings, we get so attached to an outcome. We get so attached to that outcome that we're unable to see the greater picture in things, right? And the people who we have hurt to secure that outcome, including ourselves. Because when those people who we hurt come back around and they end up retaliating against us because we were jerks or whatever, then suddenly we're like, oh, poor us, blah, blah, blah. You know, it's just so ridiculous. And I say that coming from a place of somebody who has done that over and over again in her lifetime. And I just love this step. And I also was kind of reiterating to her that we take the step one time. It's kind of like, you'll sometimes hear in AA meetings that somebody will say, oh, I take the third step every day. I'm not much of like a legalist or somebody who's very caught up on the technicalities of how you take a step. But that's actually, if you're taking it every day, that means that you didn't take it the day before or the first time you took it, which means that you have not given over your will and your life over to the care of this greater power. And people tend to think that, like, oh, I took my will back, or I started playing God again. If you took the third step and you relinquished control of this, if you really understood what you were doing when you initially took that third step, then you are still under the care of a God that you gave that third step to. Now, if you, maybe none of this makes sense to you because you're not an alcoholic. I don't think you need to be an alcoholic to get spiritual principles, because like I said earlier, this is just really closely related and reflective also of the Buddhist tradition of kind of detachment and not being super attached to outcomes or a general forceful way of living in the world. And so, yeah, I don't think you need to be an alcoholic or an addict to get this. I think that anybody can benefit from approaching life this way. And this is why people say, trust the process, trust the universe, blah, blah, blah. It sounds really woo-woo and like blah, blah, blah. Maybe you don't have a strong structure or foundation for what a spiritual higher power might be. And then you can introduce the concept of, like, when people first get sober and they're considering what a higher power could be, you always hear that somebody's like, oh, my higher power is a doorknob. Nobody actually thinks anybody ever made a doorknob their higher power. But if you had to, and that was the only way that you could put your faith into something outside of yourself, which is another conversation altogether, because we all are on a daily basis putting our faith in something or somebody outside of us that is never going to fulfill what we actually need it to fulfill, then you can kind of put together that you will eventually grow from a doorknob to maybe the door, and then the doorway, and then maybe the room, and then the building, and then the outside, and then, you know, if the AA program is one of spiritual progress, not perfection, right? So the God that you choose the first time you do the steps and take the third step is not the end all be all of God that you're going to believe. Your God will go through different variations and iterations as it continues to grow, as your spiritual life continues to grow. So if you had to start with a doorknob, so be it. But you shouldn't be at a doorknob in year 20 of recovery. You would be a very miserable person, I would assume. And to the people around you too. So anyway, all of that to say that I love step 3. I love taking the 3rd step. And I just wanted to remind myself, I think, as we start 2024, that selfishness in myself and others is not a moral failing. It is a spiritual, it's more of like a spiritual, what is that word? Like anemia. It's almost like a weakness. It's almost like there's not enough strength, there's not enough power, there's not enough iron in our spiritual blood to keep us strong. It's just this anemic way of living a spiritual life if we are living in a state of complete fear all the time. And I have a lot of compassion for when we are in fear or self-delusion, because to me it just always reminds me that when I am in fear and I am in selfishness and I'm trying to control and run the show, I am catapulted back to a time and place in my childhood when I had no control and nobody protected me. And I had to manufacture the control and the protection to feel secure and safe. And so I look at those times when I'm being selfish and kind of whatever the word is, in myself and in others, and say, oh, there was a time and place when I did not feel safe or they did not feel safe, and this is how they had to behave in order to protect themselves. And so with that, I think I'm going to sit in some more meditation. It's just something that I want to take into 2024 and live in a lot less fear, because the last 2 years, 2023 was much better, but 2021 and 22 were kind of a nightmare as far as fear was concerned. I think last year I just kind of finally started waking up a little bit from that coma of fear. But yeah, sorry if you met me in the last 2 years, I guess. So anyway, I hope everyone's having a happy new year. I hope that was helpful. I know that was just me talking a lot. I had a lot of caffeine today also, and I had been off caffeine for about 2 weeks. So, okay, I love you guys. Bye.